Hey, this is Kirk Dieter, host of Round the Fire, and I'm joined today with some really special guests on EarthX TV. First of all, I've got my friend Conway Bowman, and he's in San Diego, and then Al Quattrochi, or we're just going to call you Q or Al Q,
Sounds
and
good.
Los Angeles. Both of these gentlemen are saltwater gurus. They've been my good friends for many years. We've traipsed around the world and done some funky stuff. But we're going to talk a little bit about old times and fishing and all that stuff, and then talk about what we're seeing on the water because I'm a trout guy. I live in the mountains of Colorado, but I think we all kind of have home waters, and we all have kind of seen the impacts of what's going on in the world as far as climate change and other things that we as anglers need to tune into because we're on the front lines. We're the canaries in the coal mine who can tell people what's going on. So I want to kick that all around, but let's start by going back to the very basics, the very beginning. And I'm going to talk specifically to you, Conway, because you helped me launch my career doing a story called Fly Fishing Gone Mad for Field and Stream magazine, and it eventually made it into this book, which is the world's best.
Oh wow!
Yes, it's the world's best fishing stories. I got so it's living proof that it's all about the subject matter, and which, but I remember
it's more about the writer, actually.
No, I remember that. There I came, and you took me out on the boat, and we put in the chum, and I saw the first mako shark arrive, and you're telling me stories about how you would go out in a small aluminum boat with a compass and like find these fish, and then figured out how to pull on them. But hooking the first mako for me was surreal. It was like I described it in the story. It was like hooking an NFL wide receiver, only they go 3 times faster, and at the end of the football field, they jump over the goalpost, right? So,
yeah,
that's a great description.
Yeah, and then the 3 of us, we hit it a few years ago and got on the backside of Catalina and caught some big mamas out there. I just wondered if you guys can talk a little bit about your sharking experiences and what draws you to it, because you guys are twisted. Okay, I mean, I love you. But
well, thank you. Yeah. Appreciate that.
So, how'd you get into it, Conway?
So the way I got into it was the mako shark was the only saltwater big game fish on the West Coast that you can sight fish to with a fly rod. They come to the boat, you hook them, they jump, and they're very powerful. And they're one of the most beautiful fish in the ocean. So we're fortunate to have a good volume of this fish just a few miles off our beach here. So that's how I really got into it. My early on in life, my dad and I would spend our summers in Stanley, Idaho. So I learned how to fly fishing for trout on some really great, famous Western rivers. But we would always come back to San Diego in the winter. He was a school teacher. And so we had the winter here. So I basically, I was fly fishing for bass and bluegill. And then I was in my early 20s when I started kind of getting curious about saltwater fly fishing, because my dad had a great library. He had all the great books by Joe Brooks, Lefty Cray, and I would read these wonderful stories. And it took a while to figure out the mako game, but once I kind of figured it out, it became and has become one of the greatest fisheries on the West Coast for a fly angler, in my opinion. So yeah, I mean that's kind of that's the long and short of it.
Yeah, and the thing that struck me too was going out on the boat and all the other stuff you'd see too.
Yeah,
dolphins, whales, and it's just the ocean is so amazing. And a landlocked guy like me in Colorado, when I daydream, I daydream about trout fishing, and that's kind of where I was born and raised and so forth. But all my night dreams tend to revolve around the ocean and tarpon and sharks and stuff like that.
There's so many more of those big makos around now. But you're right. You take somebody out that isn't used to the ocean or hasn't been spend much time on the ocean. We just go a few miles offshore, and you're going to see some amazing wildlife. Yesterday I was out. We saw a blue whale. Came within 100 feet of the boat. 100-foot blue whale spouted right 100 feet of the boat. It was incredible. The folks on the boat were from Chicago, and they're like, "Whoa!" So
yeah.
in addition to seeing mako sharks, you're going to see so much other things, but it really puts people, it connects them with nature in a very, very intimate way. You're on a small boat looking at these magnificent creatures, whether it's a mako shark or a blue shark or a tuna or a 100-foot blue whale. So, and what that does, it makes people, once they get off the boat, now they become a great ambassador to the ocean, because I really don't think people that haven't been on the ocean, they've just seen it on TV, they've read about it, they've seen things on the Discovery Channel. But once they get out and experience it, it changes their life, and they become our next greatest ambassadors.
No doubt.
I agree. I was going to say, with all the bonito we have around lately, Conway, about 3 weeks ago, we were just driving the boat coming back in, and a free jump in mako just took off, and it was like out of nowhere, and we were like, oh my God, we were like little kids. It was such a cool thing. And then last week I saw something that I've never seen before. We saw the seal eating something near these big schools of bonita, and we got close to it, and my buddy goes, wow, look, he's eating a white sea bass. And we got closer, and I go, that's not a white sea bass. The seal was eating a juvenile mako.
Oh, really?
Never
Interesting.
seen anything like it. Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen that one time, and it was really interesting. But so I think that mako shark may have been weak, may have been injured, and so
that's what we have. Big shark hit the small shark or something, because there's no way the seal's going to catch a mako.
No.
There's no way.
Yeah, that's really amazing.
Or maybe somebody hooked it, released it. Who knows?
Yeah. But it's
just
crazy
weird,
to see those things out in the Pacific Ocean, and pretty close to where we live, just right offshore. So we're very fortunate.
Yeah. The beauty of the ocean is you never know what you're going to see. Every day is different. Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit more, Q. I know you're kind of a guru of the funky species called Corbina that a lot of East Coast saltwater anglers and a lot of Midwesterners and Rocky Mountain anglers, they don't even really understand it that much. And you've written a book about it. Tell us a little bit about how you got into that and what your book's about and all of that.
Well, the Corbina have always been here. They've been here for millions of years, and they were a very difficult fish to catch on a fly. And years ago, I remember fishing with a guy named Nick Curcione, and I actually caught one on lead core, like throwing cable. And I hooked one, and I landed it, and he's like, "Oh my God, you got a fair caught Corbina on a fly. That's unbelievable." And I didn't realize how important it was or how difficult it was. And then years later, I realized that people weren't catching these fish routinely. So we had a bunch of guys, just a group of guys that would go out there, and we tried to figure out how to sight fish these Corbina. And in the beginning it was tough because we were throwing heavy lines at them, but then with the progression of the new lines and the lighter sinking lines, and we came upon, my buddy Paul came up with a fly that would land soft. It was based on the Del Brown Merkin fly. We were able to get close to these fish, and we were able to get them to eat the flies consistently. And I was like, oh my God, we kind of cracked the code a little bit. So I started writing articles about it and doing lectures on it and stuff, because we were catching Corbina routinely. It was unheard of. Back when I first caught my first one, Nick basically told me, if you can count the amount of Corbina you catch on one hand in your lifetime, you're considered a great angler. And here we were, guys were getting 20, 30 Corbina in a season. It was crazy. So we started getting excited about it. And it was really only a handful of us doing it at the time. And after preaching about it after about 10 years, we're starting to see a lot of people now out on the beach chasing these fish and having a great time catching them. So something kind of caught on. We got this movement going now, and it's really exciting. And I'm very fortunate that the timing is right for me to have a book coming out on this subject. I've been threatening to write the book for 10 years, and it took COVID and lockdown and me bringing my studio from work to home to actually sit down and actually do it. So I'm happy I'm going to get that out soon. Yeah.
What's it called, and how can people get it?
The Corbina Diaries, and you can get it on love2flyfishmedia.com.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, you guys, you just triggered a thought. You guys are both code breakers. I'm talking to the code breakers here.
And you know, there's a common denominator there too, because Nick Curcione was the guy who was one of the first anglers, fly anglers, to target mako sharks on a fly rod. And he's the one who really inspired me to go out. So there's an interesting, connection there. And
absolutely.
And Nick was great. I used to harass him at all the trade shows. I'd walk up and I'd ask him all these questions, and I knew I sort of had arrived when I took him out, and we had a wonderful day. We caught a handful of really big makos. And as he got off the boat, he said, "Yeah," he goes, I think he said something like, "I may have started this, but you've pushed it to the next level. So you've arrived." I'm like, "Yeah, thanks, Nick." But Nick is that common denominator also. And so, but he was a pioneer in West Coast fly fishing. And it's really cool that he has both inspired and sort of mentored both Al and me.
Yeah.
I want to take that up a notch. I ran into Steve Abel about a couple of years ago, and he's another one that was kind of in that same thing.
Absolutely.
Steve caught a bunch of makos back in the early day, and I showed him some of the photos from the day the three of us went out. And he was like a little kid giggling. He goes, "Oh my God." He couldn't believe it. He goes, he couldn't believe the size of those fish.
Both those guys they never really caught, they caught big ones. I think 100-pounder was a big one then. But what we experienced a couple of years ago and what we're experiencing, it's crazy. So those guys were so important in sort of the evolution of the mako fishery. But now they've given us the opportunity to kind of push it to the next level, and I think we really have. It's been great. Just as the Corbina, I remember years ago, you'd see one guy fly fishing for Corbina, and now the legions of fly anglers that are doing it. It's pretty impressive.
So
it's crazy.
First of all, for context and for the audience, when we're talking about a big one now on the mako shark side, we're talking 800 pounds plus.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That is nuts. But let's talk some brass tacks, though. You guys have seen these fisheries evolve now for many years. And Conway, when you and I started fishing together, you told me, I had it in my notebook. I was looking at my old notebooks the other day, and it was like, mako sharks fishing kind of started around Memorial Day in May, and it kind of ended around Labor Day. And you had that short window, a few months. Have you seen things change with the water temps changing and the seasons changing and the fish changing? Can you walk us through a little bit of that, the climate change and the impact on what's going on with the water?
Yeah, absolutely. Michelle and I were having this conversation a couple of nights ago. So when I first started doing this, you're right. Memorial Day was the kickoff, and it pretty much tapered off after Labor Day. The water temps were cooler early, and they would warm up in August, and then they would start cooling down again in September. And what I mean by warm, back then, a year when you would have water that would hover around 70 degrees, that was warm. Okay. Now, how many years? Let's say it's 20 years later. I was out yesterday. I had 74-degree water, and we're in October. Okay, and I keep very detailed logs on all this stuff. So I've seen an increase in water temperatures over the last 20 years, and it's really starting to accelerate. The other thing that I've seen is the ocean currents have dramatically changed. When we first started doing this, you could go out and by and large, you would have a very prominent north to south current every day from May through September, October. Now that current can be north to south today. It can be east to west tomorrow. It can be swirling around and doing absolutely nothing the next day. So there's some fundamental changes going on with the ocean, and it's adversely affecting the fishery. I'm not seeing a lot of school-size mako like we used to see. So the school-size mako would be 40 to 150, 200 pounds. Not seeing a lot of those fish early on now, or during the typical peak season. I'm seeing more big fish early, like big fish, 300 to 800 pound fish, a fair amount of very small fish. And then as we're getting into the fall now, that's becoming what it was like early in the season years ago. So right now I'm seeing those 80 to 200 pound fish mixed in with a few really big ones. So it's definitely changed. And the food item for the mako shark has changed as well. Over the last 10 years, we've had a lot of bluefin tuna that have kind of migrated into our area, anywhere from 10 miles off the beach to 100 miles. And I think it's changed. That food item has changed the mako shark sort of migration pattern and what they're eating. So I will tell you, it has changed. And anybody who kind of denies, climate change, all the days and all the years that I've put on the ocean, I have never seen, and all the logs that I've kept, I've never seen such a dramatic increase in water temperature and just a fundamental change in the fishery. It's really, really interesting. So, and it's great because I can talk to Michelle about this because she's a marine biologist and she has a greater grasp on the scientific part of it. I have the observation part, but she brings in a lot of solid information that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I'm not as offshore as you are, Conway, but seeing the Dorado up here, seeing the bluefin tuna, 300, 400-pound bluefin tunas, the guys are catching them on the helium balloons and the gummies. It's insane. And we had wahoo here like not too many years ago.
2 years
Three
ago.
or 4 years. Yeah, 2 years ago we had wahoo right up here. Pretty soon I'm going to be going off the beach and catching rooster fish.
Yeah,
I mean, it's nuts.
You could be. So it's really interesting. I was reading some of Zane Gray's early writings when he was a member of the Catalina Marlin Club or Tuna Club, and that was the early 1900s, was it, something like that? But they were seeing bluefin tuna then, which is really interesting. So 100 years later, that's sort of coming back. But one thing I didn't find was water temperature. I would be curious to see what the water temperature was 100 years ago with these bluefin tuna here. So with the bluefin tuna there versus now.
Well,
right.
It kind of sounds like, I don't mean to be silly here, but it's almost good news. Like if I could catch rooster fish off the beach in LA or I'd be down, sign me up. But
yeah.
There's always the other side of the coin. What have you lost? And what
well, yeah, I think with the warming water, you're losing sort of our Southern California
native
our kelp beds, our indigenous, our native fish, our kelp, our kelp bass, our white sea bass, all those things will be pushed away unless they can adapt, which, I don't know if they can, but I know during big El Nino events, and Allie, you've seen this, we have a prolonged El Nino event, all the kelp beds disappear and the water has to cool back down to get them growing again. And that is prime habitat for all those nearshore species we have down here. I mean, the Pacific Ocean in Southern California is pretty darn cold if you think about it, in comparison to the East Coast. But right now, 74-degree water, 5 miles off the beach. I've never, ever seen that.
Yeah, the other day, 71 off the beach, 71.
It's interesting. It really is.
And we've surf perch. Where are the surf perch? I haven't seen surf perch in 2 to 3 years.
No,
I used to
cold
get them
water
all
fish.
the time.
So, other than some of the obvious things, are there ways to mitigate this? Are there things that we need to, for us in Colorado, we're experiencing fire now. In California, certainly you've experienced fires too. There are ways to mitigate the effects on rivers. We can plant more trees, we can create more shade, we can create more habitat and cover, we can keep flows going, we can do those types of things. The ocean's an awful big piece of water. And when it's changed, it's going to be changed for a while. Yeah. Are there things that we can do?
But it's really, I think the ocean is something that has to be done globally because it's everyone's problem. And it's, for many years, it was this big mysterious place that nobody understood really what the ocean was all about. And we just made it into a complete toilet bowl now. Everybody throws everything into the ocean, chemicals, plastics, you name it. I mean, we're starting to see the effects. The ocean is like the Amazon. It sucks so much carbon dioxide. It's like a filter. And now, because it's becoming acidic, we're not getting that carbon dioxide pull from the ocean anymore as much as we used to. It's really a big problem. And everybody can do their part. But like Conway says, I think getting people out on the water and experiencing the ocean is really when it becomes something that generates inside you that there is something really there. When we lose the ocean, we're going to lose everything.
Yeah.
The whole system's going to break. So
I think a lot of the inland development in Southern California, our wetlands, our riparian habitats have really been affected. the fertilizers, the nitrates that are dumped into our watersheds that end up at in the ocean, that creates just crazy red tides, which we've seen in recent years. And that really affects the food item for all the fish, you know, all the game fish. And, you know, you're seeing a lot of toxins in the bait fish, and it's affecting the mammals, it's affecting everything. So I think addressing things inland is a really important is an important thing to do. And I think we're making progress. And there's a lot of wetlands restoration and habitat groups that go out and try to restore it. But we need to stay on that, and we can't you know, have all this development. Even though Southern California is a great place to live, whatever is developed inland is going to affect what we're doing on the ocean. You know, and Al brings up a great point. We can bring out folks that are probably our age, and they can appreciate what's going on. But it's really important to get very young kids out there, and kids that honestly don't really have a connection to the ocean. So for instance, inner city kids, if you can get them out there and you can get them on a boat and observe the wildlife, things that they have never seen, they're going to go back to their classroom and they're going to say, hey, you know what? I saw a whale, I saw a mako shark, I saw an osprey dot, you know, that kind of stuff. And it's going to inspire, you know, that next, once again, that next ambassador. And you got to remember, people that live along the coast, it's a very small sliver on both coasts. It's folks that are even 10 miles inland that rarely go to the beach, that don't really have an understanding of the ocean because they're just living life. They're trying to survive. But if you can get them and put them on a boat or walking the beach without cue and just seeing what the ocean's about and how what we do inland is affecting what's in the ocean, I think that's where we should go. I think it's very important that that message gets put out, whether it's in school, you know, obviously it's got to be in schools, but just getting kids out there. And that's something that I've been really trying to do the last couple of years with a group called Cast Hope. Taking inner city kids that have never been out of their neighborhood, we get them out there. And I will tell you, you teach a kid how to fly cast or fish, but then you bring in all that other stuff, all that nature stuff, all the connecting with animals and seeing fish, blows their mind. And they're the next ambassadors because they go back and say, I not only caught a corvina, I not only saw a shark, but I saw the ocean and how it works. And it's really cool. So yeah, that, I think, in my opinion, that's what's going to save our ocean right there.
Yeah, and I know
I agree.
You too, Q, have been involved in that stuff for a long time, and you've been promoting the sport. And I think right now we're at a stage where in the fly rivers, the fishing rivers, the trout rivers, and the ocean, we need to get people connected and engaged with these resources, because if they really engage, not take them just for a boat ride, but take them so that they can understand the sport and the ecology and all that's going on and how it's so much more than pulling on fish. I think that's the future. Don't you, Q?
I do. And even for the fellow fly fishermen, you know, we all go out to the beach and we wear a stripping basket. That's great. You know, it's important to have that. But after you're done fishing and you got to walk back to the car, put plastic in that stripping basket. Right. Put the garbage, put the cans that you see throw that all in the stripping basket, walk to a garbage can and throw it away. If everybody did that, the beaches would be clean. You don't have any idea what I see in the morning when I get down there and the stuff that's left there from the day before. It's absolutely incredible. The guys that are out on the beach, sweeping the beaches and doing this, they're heroes, because there's so much stuff. People, and it's mostly, I want to point the finger, but inner city people don't understand that it's, you know, if they go out and have a good time and they just leave everything.
Well, you're right. And it's because
we gotta realize that you can't do that.
And it's because a lot of folks are just trying to survive. They're just trying to get just trying to get to the next day. And that kind of stuff just is not in their wheelhouse. But if we can give them some skin in the game, get anybody's skin in the game to be an ambassador, and that's what it's going to take. And I think that the more people we get out on the water to observe, not necessarily even fish, just observe and understand.
You can get kids just snorkeling. If you put a couple of kids on top of a kelp forest in 10 feet of water and just have them snorkel, it'll blow their mind.
Oh my gosh.
It's like a living aquarium, you know, and everything is all related.
And it's better because they're actually in the water and they're actually engaged and immersed in that, not looking through a fish tank and those are
Or
all
a phone.
that stuff's
Not
great
looking
too.
on a phone. Yeah.
Exactly.
Exactly.
That's what we need to do. It's so
You guys-
important.
You guys are making me Jones to get to the ocean, and I don't know.
All right.
But I want to come. We're getting near the end here, and I'm almost out of time. But I wanted to thank you for joining me on EarthX TV here and being around the fire. We have been in the past.
Oh
around
yeah.
the fire many times.
Yeah.
And to great effect in some cool places in the world, from California to Colorado to Alaska, together. And I'm looking forward to the day that we can do that again in person. But for now, I wanted to just thank you guys for being brothers and friends and comrades in arms and helping Dieter out on this and being a part of EarthX TV.
Hey, thank you, Kirk. You do a lot. You do a lot for the environment. You do a lot for fishing, and your passion is very contagious, and we appreciate you.
Yeah.
So,
We love you, man. You're a bright spot in our world. That's for sure.
Well, thank
absolutely.
you. All right. Well, this has been a good time, good chat, good around the fire, and we'll do it again sometime. Thanks, guys.
All right, guys. CKD.
See you, KD.
We are sportsmen, and we are in trouble. We've learned what happens when we underestimate a serious threat. We can't make that same mistake with climate change. We need to stand up for America and for our kids and grandkids. Tell Congress to act on climate.